now call to order. It is 5:30 p.m. If y'all please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Also here with us tonight. So if y'all would just introduce yourselves to the authority.
My name is Riverlands Authority. I'm a rising senior at Linear High School and I'm part of the youth council.
I'm Marjorie Guerrero. I'm a rising senior at North Bennett High School, and I'm a council member on this year's youth council.
Hi, my name is Chloe Moore, and I'm a senior at Linear High School, and I'm also a member of our youth council.
Thank you so much for joining us. We are really happy to have you here. Okay, for authority, everybody should have received a copy of our agenda for this evening. If there are no changes or additions, can I get a motion to adopt the agenda? Motion. Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor? And also, our minutes were mailed out from the June 27th special call meeting. Are there any corrections needed to those minutes? Okay, no corrections are needed. Can I get a motion to adopt the minutes from that May meeting? Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor? Okay. At this time, I'd like to open the floor to public comment. If there are any members of the community who would like to speak, they'd have 3 minutes, and we ask them to state their name.
Amber Chambers, 809 Whitehead Road. As you know, I've been attending these meetings. I have a legal right to record them. When I record them, the sound is often very muffled. Even if I go through software and double the sound level, there are some of you that are inaudible, and it's not a matter of distance from the camera, because as you can see, Mr. Grassley sits very far away from me, and I can always hear him perfectly in the recordings. If you could please boost your sound level, everyone, to the level of Mr. Grassley, I would appreciate it.
Anyone else from the community would like to speak? Okay, we'll close the public comment portion. All right, I'd like to introduce KB Advisory Group. They are going to give us a presentation on their market analysis.
All right, thank you very much, Chair. Good evening, everyone. I'm Jeff Koski, president of KB Advisory Group. This is Tate Wilson and Trevor Butler, who really did most of the heavy lifting on what we're about to talk about tonight. So we appreciate the opportunity to work with the city. Our firm, KB, when we were known as Blakely Advisory Group, prior to that, we've done a lot of work with the city through the years, and we've always appreciated this this chance to be part of a growing city, of a dynamic city. And so we got really excited about this idea. We've been looking at this property through the years, as the city has, and asked us to weigh in through the years, but we've never really dug in this deep on this property. So our job in this is really, again, as it says, the market analysts. So we are based in Atlanta. We are a real estate market analysis and economic development consulting firm. So this is right up our alley in the types of things we do. But I say that to say, this was a unique project for us, this idea of a market analysis on this type of property. Usually when we do a market analysis for a downtown, for example, we're looking at residential opportunities, retail opportunities as they present themselves, office opportunities as they present themselves in more of a downtown or a development type setting. This required us to kind of go outside, color outside the lines, if you will, a little bit, because it is such a unique property with unique properties and with unique restrictions on it. So while we approached it as a market analysis, it kind of bobbed and weaved in directions that we would call not typical to a downtown market analysis. And so because of that, we relied heavily on case studies. We were looking at elements of other developments, other similar types of lands that may be more developed than this will ever be, less developed than this will ever be, but we're trying to learn lessons from places that have been successful and have made a positive impact on their community. And that's really what we wanted to kind of think through on this, is not just what does the market want, but what does the market want in the context of the Sugar Hill community. And so all of these things kind of came together to equal what we came up with, our answers, if you will. And so I'm going to pass it off to Tate and Trevor to really go through the details. And again, what we're going to talk about tonight is really the high level summary of the overall report. So we're not going to go page by page through the report. We've got it summarized. And so we kind of started at a as they say, a 10,000 foot level, because I think it's important for us as the analysts, but also everyone, to kind of put in context what's going on here, that there is a major initiative in the Atlanta region to really activate the Chattahoochee River, right? So we think Sugar Hill is being appropriately proactive to take a look at this property. But in the same time, it's important to know that Sugar Hill isn't the only one who's really interested in the Chattahoochee River, right? And so this map on the left comes from the Trust for Public Land, who's really leading this initiative to really activate this river. As we know, in Atlanta, we're not known for really any geographical specialties, right? We don't have a beach. We don't really have the mountains, at least they're not that close. And so the Trust for Public Land is leading this initiative to say, how do we take this one natural resource that we do have, that runs throughout the entire region, and how do we activate it? How do we make it useful for our community? And I think that's really what guides this work, is not so much to say, how can you make the most money? How can you build the most stuff? How can you do, what a typical real estate development might want to do? But how do you do this successfully that we think can be, accepted by the market, the economics work, but also the community can be engaged. This is a place that the community can be proud of. This is a place that we've seen other communities this is a type of place that we've seen other communities embrace. And so that's kind of how we approach this specific task. And so again, just zooming in one more on this map on the right, is now looking closely at the Riverlands property. And what you see there is 41,900 AADT. That stands for average annual daily trips. That means there's 42,000 cars that go by here every day. That's a lot of cars. That's a ton of cars. Grocery stores, when they're looking for places to go, they look for places that have at least 30,000 cars a day. So this is the type of place that could theoretically be, a lot could happen here, right? The commercial market would probably show up, would get interested in this land, mostly because of that number, 42,000 cars going by. But again, this is not just a market opportunity. This is, what do you do with that? And so from there, I'm going to pass it off to Tate to kind of give you a sense of what we were looking at and how we got to the conclusions that we did.
Yeah, so staying kind of high level, just thinking about our state in general and spending, because part of this is attracting retailers and appropriate retailers that want to set up shop here, and if there's revenues on the city side to benefit from, this could really be an asset. And we've seen, since 2020, I think this is just looking at Georgia, the value of recreational spending to GDP. And you can see, kind of this incline, particularly on the boating and fishing side, but also on the cycling, and it's not making up the same amount of money because bicycles are less expensive than boats. But again, you see that increase across the board. It's about 20% increase in spending, and so just to kind of set the precedent that this is in demand, nationally and statewide, visitations to parks and the ability to create a gateway here, I think is really important. You saw on the last map just the way that the property is set up. There's going to take investment in leading people to the recreational opportunities that are there, and so there is that opportunity to create, a well-fit commercial gateway that allows people to access this and really, complements and invigorates this area. And what we started to look at then was, okay, nationally, where are we seeing some of these concepts pop up? We worked with various downtowns who are actually interested in inputting, certain, mountain biking trails within their downtown and having the juxtaposition of the recreation plus those supportive retail opportunities and programming. And so we looked at variety. A lot of them are in the West, but that you're seeing those that are popping up. This one in Asheville. Auto Camp is a very interesting concept. They're expanding pretty rapidly, utilizing it's kind of a glamping model, but they've got kind of a central clubhouse that is, a less invasive or intense development type, where then kind of you can have the accommodations, thinking of more of a hospitality concept, but this is really the clubhouse. And so spent a lot of time looking at the development, the mix of retail and commercial and office uses that these places do have and have been able to successfully create place. And so from that, really took out of the hospitality side a smaller boutique. I don't think any of these case studies had more than 60-room hotels. And so really thinking about the leisure traveler. But I think also in your position here, you can also pick up some, I keep saying bleisure. People keep saying leisure. It sounds bad, I get it. It's the business and leisure side, right? So there is an opportunity there. And I think that that's really important to keep in mind, particularly on the event space. And so the hospitality concept really acts as the hub for all of this activity. So if you do have retail, you do have your F&B, some of your restaurants, a beer garden, all of that is kind of interconnected within the hospitality concept. And I think that's a really strong opportunity right on that front retail road frontage. The office side, I want to say, there's not a high demand for new office. I'm bearing my lead for Trevor, sorry. But when we did take a look at the spaces that were available, they're event-based. So, and it ranges from anything from, you've got wellness retreats, you've got some business retreats, gatherings that are more social, the idea of a wedding venue or social venue in that capacity, something that is, locally serving within kind of this regional context, was very successful. There were some co-working opportunities, but again, the idea of a traditional Class A office going in here is not a part of the concepts that we looked at, but the event space I think really helped to drive demand to these sites too, and really created unique places. And then finally, the retail, all of the retail concepts were fresh and new. So it was, you've got your skateboard shop. This is an example that's in Salt Lake City. They've got your skateboard shop, and then they have a skate park, right? So it's a complementary feature. You're grabbing the attention of the person who is going to go cycling here. Well, then you've got your bike shop, and on top of that, you've got your repair shop and your gear lockers, and all of that is kind of in this cohesive look. So, and that's kind of the investment that would be necessary to make this whole area more accessible to get to. Finally, just want to kind of hit on the commercial mix that we're seeing here. If you read the full report, there's a ton of market data to sift through, but really the key takeaways here are that mix of retail. The retail is high in here, and it's mixed into your hospitality spaces as well. And office is not making up more than 15%. And that's including some of that event space that exists within hospitality. So you could recategorize it if you got into the weeds. So honing in a little bit more here, I'm going to pass it over to Trevor to talk about kind of the market health of what we were saying, and these are just kind of the key takeaways.
Yep. So this is definitely just like the 10,000 mile sort of view of the market across these three different commercial property classes. And this is, while we did do a lot of like case study work, this is sort of just a snapshot of the data, the market data that we investigated. So within the retail market, there's very low vacancy at this point, as well as climbing rents, and that's just something we've seen over the last decade or so. And in that context of the regional trade area there, the pipeline is relatively weak. So we feel like there is sort of a strong opportunity for retail on the site. With the office, there's definitely higher vacancy, which is in part driven by like a lot of deliveries in Alpharetta and Lawrenceville in recent years. Still growing rents to some degree, and there is a strong pipeline, so that the opportunities seemed a bit weaker. And then for hospitality, this one is a little bit wonkier in terms of just like thinking of how occupancy and ADR sort of affect demand for those sort of things. But the occupancy is quite low, especially relative to the pre-pandemic levels. It's below 70%, which is kind of, they check me on that, but is that sort of the healthy 70%?
It's like a benchmark, and it's improving, but there's some volatility in the hospitality market right now, and it's highly segmented. And I think really the pipeline is where if attracting a hotel to the site was something that Sugar Hill was interested in doing, it would have to be very niche. And I think that is also kind of fits in with the character of the Riverlands anyway.
And by the way, ADR is average daily rate, so that's basically the average of what the cost is. And you actually see often rates will fluctuate beyond, weekends might be $300 on average, for example. So this is the average across a large swath of hotels.
This is all scales as well.
Right, and the full report has it sort of segmented out by the scales. We see a lot of variation in the performance of those different scale hotels. So let's take it. Yep. And so this is sort of just a summary of our sort of the opportunity that we're seeing. And this is the areas that we're looking at. So we have the regional trade area, which is that big sort of triangular shape. And then there's the local trade area, which is wrapped around Lake Lanier essentially. And then there's the greater Sugar Hill area. And basically for the retail opportunity, we're looking at the larger area as well as the more local area for opportunity. And what we were seeing is a significant opportunity for sporting and outdoors, health and wellness, clothing, accessories, bars and restaurants. And we feel like that is something that's compatible with the site, which is sort of centered around your community green space. And then, so moving into the office, we feel like that's a very limited opportunity on the site, frankly, and the only way that we really see that happening is if it was integrated within a hospitality concept, and not really as like a freestanding co-working, but more as just an amenity space for the hotel or for whatever is built there. And then within the hospitality class, it definitely would need to be a very sort of unique offering, a boutique in nature, and within the context of the site, of the recreational destination that it's planning to be.
So what we get to after we crunch all these numbers is the program. And so, this is, again, KB's look at it, and just thinking, well, what is the opportunity and how could it be programmed? Thinking from a square foot point of view, the majority there is going to be in that retail. We think there's demand heavily for the F&B programming side of it, but also for an outdoor outfitter and maybe some smaller retail spaces. Again, I think, retail has recovered in the last decade, I would say 2 decades, since we stopped building retail in the same way. And so the demand for smaller square foot spaces is pretty high, especially for more of those local vendors. So again, thinking about how to incorporate, say, 450 square feet store in multiple of those rather than one large national credit tenant, which I think could be an interesting asset for the community and a place for local retailers to be able to access those rents and not paying, your rates for 1,500 square feet that they likely don't even need. And the fitness and wellness retail, I think, also could find its way into this mix very well. On the hospitality front, making up about 30% of the total commercial space, thinking new built space. I'm not calculating out what the campsites would be there, but just within the hotel and the event and lobby and cafe space, those are kind of how we're penciling out here. The office and meeting space, I would say the majority of that is likely meeting space. That's been a big, just looking at the case studies, the success has really been when people can, when operators can program that. So having the availability to host certain even corporate retreats, provides revenue for the hotel operator allows them to provide a level of service that you would want to see on this site. And just really, this is kind of a art and science situation here, but thinking about having that adventure component, the availability of gear lockers and even a workshop space before you go hit the trails or what have you. The gear rental, I think, kind of incorporates into that retailer. If you could get a cool outdoor outfitter who has that kind of concierge service kind of built in, would be a real opportunity there. The demand here for the hotels and the campsites is somewhat of an and, but it could be an or. So I don't think to say that you don't need the hotel in order to have demand for some of those campsites. And it ties well into thinking about kind of the south side of the property with the opportunity to do a wedding venue. And not just a wedding venue, it could be other reunions and parties and spaces that, frankly, I mean, you've seen growth in that in North Georgia for sure, and so I think you're close enough to pick up a lot of that demand. I think I've kind of hit on the event space here, the retreats and workshops. But finally, I think when you're thinking about these uses, we break them up by numbers, but ultimately the success of this would be that these are all synergistic together. So the form and the format would, you wouldn't necessarily know walking through, you're like, okay, this is the hotel space versus this is the restaurant space versus this is the co-working space. I think the success of much of these kind of recreational districts is that they mend together and kind of bring you on a journey just as you're going out on the journey to some of those recreational activities. So I'm talking quickly, but that's really that's all of our slides. Again, the report is much more in depth. Happy to answer any questions if you all have any thoughts on those or get deeper into any of these individual pieces.
I'll just add too, and I thank you. I think you guys did a great job with that. The way you might want to look at this table on the right is sort of the palette for which this can be planned. We gave some ranges, but even within those ranges, I think there's some wiggle room. Again, depending on how the land lays out, how the planners look at it, where building footprints would be. There's a bit of a fungibility here, and again, I think the key is what Tate said is how do these pieces all fit together, right? As much as is it 40 rooms or is it 60 rooms? Any of it could work from a market viability standpoint, but if these uses don't come together and are kind of play nicely together and feed off each other, probably none of it's going to work, right? Like you gotta build something that is attractive and interesting, and you gotta have an operator who knows how to make it work. And then it will come to life. And when it comes to life, this is what we think the palette of opportunity is. But again, it could go, there are some different sort of ways that it could go depending on what it wants to be, right? If you want to really lean heavy into the events, to the weddings, to that, you could lean heavier that way. If you want to lean into the bikes and those sort of more naturalistic outdoor opportunities, it could lean more that way, or they could all fit together and you could have kind of a bigger development, if you will. But that it all feeds off of the nature, right? So none of this we would say wants to be big and audacious. We would say it all needs to kind of work well with the nature that is there. And lean into that idea of, hey, we're getting you close to the Chattahoochee River. We're opening up the river to you. We're opening up these 100+ acres to the community so that the community has a place to gather and to recreate and to maybe even spend the night. So that's really the idea that execution will be key. These numbers are what we would consider market opportunities. And we feel very confident that this mix could work, but it's not the only mix, and ultimately it comes down to execution. But we think this will provide some good input into the planners who are on the case, and that's really the intention of all of this.
May I ask a question?
Please.
Is it Tate?
Yes.
Okay, your first graph with the Georgia Outdoor Recreation value,
Uh-huh.
you mind putting that up?
That's your first graph.
This one?
So there's like a periwinkle line midway about the $500,000 mark,
Yes.
but I don't see what, the graph doesn't show what that is.
The hunting,
No, it's above the green.
The blue?
The blue between the green. Well, I think
The bicycle's the light blue at the bottom.
oh, that's the light blue.
I would just be curious since it's at the $500,000 mark.
Something got left off somewhere.
Yeah.
The only thing I see not included is game areas, and it says it includes golf and tennis, but that's only 11%.
Field sports. Because equestrian is on here too. Yeah. Yeah, I think that is, no, the field sports is on there.
It may have gotten cut off at the bottom there. It looks like under field sports. Well, let us.
No, I
Maybe you
think
could
it
just
is
let
game
Claire
areas.
know and let us
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
I'll clarify
Certainly.
that one.
Okay.
Thank you.
In the reported, pretty certain it's gotta be the game areas, which is the golf and tennis, which would make sense on the spending front. That one would be up there.
It would also make sense from the line going up from 2020, in that golf has had a real explosion of popularity since then. So we will definitely make sure we get that right. But I think it just got cut off when we made this presentation. But that does look to be golf and tennis probably.
Yeah.
And I had a question, probably just to clarify a little bit, but we're talking about percentages, not of the entire Riverlands property, but of the commercial portion, which is only about 10% of the Riverlands property.
That's right.
Not to be confused that we're looking at all of these numbers for all of that land.
No, not at all. Much of it is unbuildable,
Yes.
right? So it's just kind of, again, I keep referring to it as like the gateway to enjoying all of those recreational opportunities. So kind of this pink and yellow and purple up here is the footprint that we're thinking of, and we're not, our portion of this is not thinking about where those all go, but given kind of this footprint, what's possible
Thank you.
with the market.
Anybody else have a question?
I like your choices on where you did all the different the market research on it. I kind of like the bring the West East kind of theme. I wrote that right down, I was like, oh, I might have a theme here.
Yeah, no, I think you're starting to kind of see it, I would say, kind of in like Appalachia. It's growing. You're seeing it more so in North Carolina, kind of really popping up. And I think Georgia has the opportunity to provide some of this, and there's huge demand that exists, and not enough folks that are tackling that. And yeah,
Have the resources to
certainly,
do it.
Mhm.
yeah.
I mean, Roswell can't do it, Cumming can't do it per se, but I mean, from the studies we've done, that's what the community's looking for.
Yeah.
They're looking for outdoor feel, and I like the idea that your examples are, your studies were out west, because that'd be so cool, because we are the beginning of North Georgia. So I think that is, at high level, what we're hearing from the community is like, this is kind of what we're looking for.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I like that, bring the West East.
Coin it.
But I think, there's a to me a great example not far from here, just kind of the retail piece. If you go up to Tallulah Falls, right on the river, there's a shop that comes out of Clayton, Georgia, called Wander, and you've probably seen the shirts that say Wander, North Georgia. They're everywhere. They're on people's cars. Mm-hmm. That shop started in Clayton, downtown Clayton. It's still there. It's a very cool shop. Then they got them to operate this building that was just sitting there in the state park, and they've opened up this kind of bigger shop now also. And it's a really cool shop. I would consider it an outfitter, but it's kind of a, outfitter / clothing store / bookstore / lots of things. Kind of a general store almost. And I think that, and they just opened a couple years ago. So, it's right there on the road. It's easy to get to. It seems to be mobbed with people every time I go by there. So it's just as an example, Wander, we could see that kind of shop fitting in here very, very, very nicely. Just as an example to say that, some of these big case studies were not necessarily local, but we see plenty of examples locally that make us think that this could work, this type of thing could work here.
Like component pieces.
Mhm,
I don't think
component
anybody's
pieces.
put it all together, and this property has the opportunity to do that really well.
And the point you're making, that the synergies of that whole area, that's exactly what I think we're tasked with, because that's what we're hearing from the community. It's like outdoor, we want that, we want to enjoy that, but it needs to fit together.
Yeah.
We don't want, I don't want to make bad examples, but yes, I like every point you guys were making in the sense of, we need to have it, that area is such a unique area. If we have it west comes east, have that feel. If there's a boutique hotel, it needs to fit. It can't be Motel 6, right?
Right.
It needs to fit. If that's what complements the other an outfit or bikes or walking trails, whatever, so.
Any other questions or comments from the authority?
Did you have any hotels in that 40 to 60 range that, do you have an example of what that kind of operators, most operators are twice that number or maybe slightly more?
Yeah, there's actually really interesting, I'm forgetting the name of the Granary campus in Salt Lake City. Evo Hotel is running that, and they're actually an outfitter this is their first hotel concept. And so they kind of taken the opportunity to, of their ground floor retail space, they then incorporated that into their rooms and thinking about how to connect. I want to see that in the shop, and then I go see it and it's in my room. So I thought that was a pretty interesting one. It's likely an independent hotel, which is actually a benefit in a way, because you've got something that's really unique here that is more sellable, right? And you wouldn't necessarily want kind of the baseline of what a hotel chain does and their brand to come in there. You could really get something that's interesting. The inn that's at the Riverwalk is an independent hotel as well. And then AutoCamp really just operates themselves, and they circle around this clubhouse idea. So they've got the clubhouse, and then they don't have an attached hotel. They've got cabins, or they've got glamping opportunities, or they've got renovated Airstreams.
I was gonna say the Airstreams are theirs, they're not brought in, right?
Yeah. No, it's not like an in and out situation.
Yeah, interesting.
So, yeah, they've done some really beautiful things with their central clubhouse areas, I think, so.
But Taylor, your point is well taken, that there is this idea of economies of scale in the hospitality world and in every world, but that, some traditional hotel operators would tell you, oh gosh, that's a crazy idea. You can't run a hotel with less than 120 rooms, right? That, I think, is the old way of thinking. And if you're building a Motel 6 on the side of a highway, that's probably true. It's not probably true. That is true. There is this economies of scale is a real thing, in that if you only got 60 rooms, you still need a staff that could do 100 rooms to make it work. But this, I think, is a little bit different. Number one, I think there may be 60 rooms plus all the other places to sleep that get you to 100, 120. But also to the point that this is not run. At some level, it is run like a hotel, because you got people coming in and out every night. You got to have that room clean, et cetera, et cetera. But at the same time, there's a lot of other revenue streams that are on the property. And so if you find the right operator that gets that kind of tie all these things together, I think there's a financial model that would make sense. but it wouldn't be the typical, hotel operator. There, again, going back to Clayton, downtown Clayton, they just opened a 40-room hotel right in downtown Clayton. It'll be interesting to see how it goes. They don't have a year's under their belt to say what kind of success they're having. But again, I think you're starting to see this idea that if you do boutique right and you put it in the right place and surround it with the right things and other revenue streams, it allows you to kind of break the rules, if you will.
Yeah.
Go outside the lines of what is typical. But it's a really good question.
Well, the
and something
operator's
we
pretty
talked
key.
about. Yeah, doing
Yeah.
it right.
And I think that's, the reason I asked that question, you see a lot of those boutique hotels, either in national parks, like out in the Yellowstone area, has those boutique hotels that are smaller, or along coastal areas, like 30A it has no typical Hilton, Marriott type.
Yeah.
They're very niche, small hotels along 30A that are more geared towards that recreational component, that in that case being the beach, or in the case of the park, hiking, and probably close to what we're talking about. So I think those are good corollaries as to how those hotels work without the typical member, or where you're a member of a Bonvoy with Marriott
Right.
or IHG or something like that. So yeah.
And there's a couple of brothers up in the Pacific Northwest, in Washington and Oregon, that build, Northern California, that build a lot of very specific design of nature hotels. They're independent, but they've done some great work. So, but it's in the Pacific Northwest, that's the type of hotel you like to see, I think.
I think the central clubhouse theme also gives us an opportunity for a sense of place where people can meet rather than individual dining experiences. And Mulberry Gap up in North Georgia does a great job with rustic cabins, and then they've got a central clubhouse where you dine together with all the other campers, and it really fosters relationships, which is something that's important to the community, to foster those relationships, get to know your neighbors, and even people that are coming in to visit, that they get to meet people in the community. I think it's a great way.
Yeah, the exclusive hotel lobby is does not fit here, right?
Yeah.
It's gotta,
Yeah.
your daytime users are mingling in the same retail areas that your hotel guests are, that your event spaces are.
And I'll just kind of add on too, that you think about the maps that we were showing, the large areas that we would call kind of the trade area. We do think this would draw from really metro-wide people. If you do it right, if it's unique and if it has the right mix, you could draw from a wide area. Obviously, you're going to need to draw from outside the local area to fill up hotel rooms and to have people spend the night there. But at the same time, I'm saying all that to say, at the same time, it becomes this amazing asset for the local community, right? You've got, whatever it ends up being is something unique and interesting that draws from all over the metro area, at least, if not all over the southeast potentially. And it's right here in your backyard, and you can go recreate and use it, and it's yours as community members. But theoretically, this could be something that people could label world class. These are the types of developments that get a lot of attention, and it doesn't have to be world class. I'm just saying that if you did it right, it could elevate itself because it will be so unique. But even if it's just Gwinnett County class, whatever that looks like, and it draws from the entire county, it's going to be an asset for the local community, no doubt, because it adds so much natural space and also retail and potential places to recreate and eat and that sort of thing too. And that's the idea behind our market analysis, is that you get demand from both. That it's not just a place that attracts from the outside, and it's not just a place that attracts locals, but together you get sort of this kind of unique collection of uses.
I think you're hitting the nail on the head, because as you mentioned, TPL, if we're the trailhead for 100 Mile, that is going to draw people in. They might not even know that this aspect is there. They're like, oh my gosh, I didn't know this was here. Bringing a lot more people into Sugar Hill, which is going to benefit the whole community. But it's a balance. You want to make sure local benefits and enjoys it, But we do want outside people to come and see what a gym we have here in Sugar Hill, what's been created, what's gonna be created. You know, a great green space.
Yep.
Thank you so much for your presentation and for the explanations, and it was nice to have it condensed because I was reading through my 49 pages.
Yeah.
So thank you very much, I appreciate it. You guys did a great job.
Oh, well, thank you.
Thank
It
you.
was a fun one to work on.
All right, and then I think, Claire, you have an update for us on the Riverlands master plan?
Yeah, not a big update, really just wanting to go ahead and kind of get a space on the agenda as the plan progresses to just have open for updates, whatever they may be as they come up. Really just, we've gotten Thomas and Hutton all the data now, I think.
I've got like 3 gigs of data. It's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot, so, they're moving with that, and.
They're done, right?
Yeah, I think that's about, unless you have anything to add.
Yes, I mean, that's the main thing. We've got all the data now transferred over. We pulled it over to our server. We're kind of sifting through a lot of shape files and things to compare to what we had originally as a base file. So that's where we are. We plan on trying to pull all that together here this kind of week, kind of figure out what we got, and then we'll dig into the study probably a lot more in depth and look at through the numbers of everything that y'all have done and work from that and kind of figure out where we go from here. Looking forward to it.
And thanks for sitting in on the meetings, I think it's gonna be.
Oh yeah, no, that's fine.
Get as much
Sounds good.
information to you guys as possible.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't think we have any new business. I'd like to move on to comments from our directors, and if anybody has anything they'd like to say, we'll start with Steve.
I was at the Sparks in the Park, and I saw some of the members of the community there, they were in here. And I think that's kind of what we're also going for, a spot where a lot of the community can go. I think that's what we're being tasked with. So every demographic was there. That's what we're going for. This has potential of being just that and then some more. So it was exciting. I love this challenge. I appreciate everyone, volunteering their time, being part of this. This is exciting. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Lexi, anything?
I would just suggest, we all got a copy of the Parks, Green Space, and Recreation Master Plan. To read through that, there's a lot of information in there specific to the Riverlands in there that I think aligns with Envision 100, much of what we've been presented, what KB did today. I think that's a really good baseline because there was a lot of public input taken into that Parks, Green Space and Recreation Master Plan, and I think that was, if you read through specific to the Riverlands, because there's a specific section in there about the Riverlands, I think that's a really good and helpful place of where we're headed, and I thought that was really helpful, and I was glad to see that. I just got to read that last week, and that was really good. So and I know we've got that over to Thomas and Hutton, and I think that's a great baseline for where we're going. That's all.
Thank you.
Well, we had Trust for Public Land speak with us, and at this point, they're compiling a list of all the projects that have happened over the last 3.5 years, and it's now at $260 million up and down the Chattahoochee River, and that's not even mentioning some of what's already happening in Sugar Hill. So there's a lot of energy and a lot of excitement all the way up and down the river, and so being at the trailhead on the north side, there's so much attention that is being directed toward us and what we're doing up here. So it's a challenge, but it's also very exciting. So look forward to it.
I have no comments.
I don't have anything that's not needed. Okay. Do we have need for executive session, or let me read all the formal stuff. Do we have need for an executive session to discuss legal, real estate, and/or personnel matters?
No.
No? Okay. So if not, then I would like to get a motion to adjourn.
I motion to adjourn the meeting.
A second? All in favor? All right, meeting is adjourned at 6:13 p.m. Thank you, everybody, for coming.